Crime has existed since the beginnings of civilization. Society needs to distinguish between criminals and innocents, but criminals don't typically just confess. So how do you know which suspect is telling the truth and which one is lying? The polygraph was invented by John Larson in the early 1920s and was used to detect lying by measuring heart rate, blood pressure, and respiration. To detect whether a suspect was lying during an interrogation, law enforcement measured these variables to different types of questions using a technique called the control question test. The control question was designed to evoke an emotional response in the suspect, and that response was compared to a question about the crime. The logic was that an innocent person would react to the control question, but not the crime question. A guilty person, on the other hand, would react to both. But in practice, innocent persons experience so much stress during an interrogation that they react to many questions, making them appear guilty and leading investigators to make wrongful convictions. To solve this problem, David Liken invented the guilty knowledge test in the late 1950s. The guilty knowledge test was not designed to detect an emotional response, but was intended to identify whether the suspect recognized crime-relevant information or not. Instead of asking questions about the crime, the investigator might simply present the murder weapon alongside other irrelevant but similar weapons. To an innocent, no single weapon stands out in particular, but a guilty person knows exactly which weapon they used to commit the crime. Research shows that Liken's test succeeded in reducing wrongful convictions, but strayed too far in the opposite direction. Now guilty criminals were getting away. In the effort to appear innocent, guilty persons were using countermeasures or covert methods to influence the results of the test, and none of the current polygraph methods were able to resist them. It was now the 1980s, and scientists were searching for a solution to the countermeasure problem. Until now, polygraphs had exclusively measured autonomic indices like heart rate or respiration, but these measures can be manipulated, either voluntarily or through the use of drugs or other methods. This prompted scientists to look for a measure that was not under voluntary control, ultimately leading their search to the brain. Peter Rosenfeld, a cognitive neuroscientist, was inspired by Sam Sutton's research from the 1960s. Sutton had discovered a brainwave called the P300, which was generated when an individual saw a meaningful stimulus. The P300 brainwave was and still is the center of much attention in the scientific community, and scientists like Immanuel Donchin, John Pollich, and Ray Johnson Jr. popularized the brainwave as an index of memory recognition, among other competing theories. Rosenfeld hypothesized that the P300 brainwave could be used in Liken's guilty knowledge test, and he published the first article on the brainwave-based polygraph in the late 1980s. Results showed that the P300-based test was a success, and this effort was soon replicated by other scientists. The P300 Concealed Information Test, as it is now called, has nearly 40 years of peer-reviewed research behind it. Although the test is not yet admissible as evidence in court, research shows that it is highly accurate, and countries like Japan have recently implemented the CIT in their justice system. Although the original P300 CIT was not immune to countermeasures, as scientists had hoped, Rosenfeld went on to create a version of the P300-based test that successfully resists the usual countermeasures. Though the field is not well known, scientists around the world study the P300 CIT. Most research aims to perfect the test's diagnostic performance. Should they succeed, the P300 CIT could aid the justice system in efforts like preventing terrorist attacks, detecting identity theft, and providing evidence of innocence for the wrongfully accused.